Hello and welcome to Building Futures, career conversations with leading individuals across the built environment. Today, I'm really excited to be interviewing David Stevens. Hello, David.
Hey, Gail.
So we met each other recently.
We did.
We were both on stage, International Women's Day, Bristol. It was a Women in Property event, and we were both speakers. And I remember thinking when I heard you speak, this is a guy that I need to get on this video series. So here we are today.
Thank you.
So can you just, for everybody, because obviously I know you, but for everyone who doesn't, can you give a bit of a summary of what you do now and your career?
Sure. So I'm David Stevens. I'm a building services engineer, a chartered engineer. I'm a trustee board member for the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers. I chair their LGBTQI panel, and I'm vice chair of the facilities management group. And so by day, I'm a chartered engineer, and by evening, I'm really involved with CIBSE and our professional networks. I started working life as an apprentice electrician, realised quite quickly, whilst it was a fantastic job, that working in a building without a roof probably wasn't the best career decision I could make. And I was really jealous and envious of the people walking around in the shiny hard hats and suits. So I decided that I wanted to be a shiny hard hat and suit. So I moved across into engineering, design and project management. So working for traditional building services, engineering firms, finding placements through Hayes in my early days. And then I made the move over into operational management and facilities management. I didn't quite know it was FM at the time when I started to do it, and that was with the University of Warwick. So that was my first client-side role and my first role in the operational arena. From there I moved to University College London and had a number of facilities roles in there. And then from there, just towards the end of the pandemic, I moved to the NHS, where I'm now a Director of Estates, Facilities and Capital Development.
So when you look back, do you think there were certain pivotal either decisions that you made in your career that's meant that you've been so successful, or is it more just a wisdom that you could pass on to anyone as to why you think your career has gone in the way it has?
I suppose there's been many pivotal decisions, not necessarily the right ones or ones I could recommend, but realising quite quickly whether I'd made a right decision. And I was not a success at school. School did not work for me. And I know a lot of people feel like that, and having to make that decision about what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Well, you don't have to make that decision. So going into engineering and working in the built environment, I knew was something that I wanted, but the qualifications weren't there. Pivotal decisions, I made a pivotal decision to give up work. So once I got all my BTECs, I then wanted the degrees, but I wanted the university experience. I was slightly more mature. Nobody would have said that about me back then, but I was classed as a mature student in my early 20s, and I gave up work to become a student. I practiced throughout whilst I was a student, but I gave up work. But then I realised quite quickly I really enjoyed the university environment, and how can I stay here longer? And the way to do that, I think, for me, was to do a second degree. And I got really involved in the Students' Union and writing for and then running the Students' Union newspaper. And for me, that's when I first decided about networking and working with others and helping others. Other pivotal decisions, again, it's work-related and education-related. I'd got to a level of engineering competency and managerial level where I was happy with, but realised that if I was going to proceed further, I had to do something else. So I was already doing some voluntary work with some of the institutions, but I realised that I needed to do another degree. So I then did my MBA. And whilst I'm an engineer, I'm proud of an engineer. Becoming chartered is one of the most things that I'm proud about in my career. Going away and doing the MBA, that changed my mindset as to how I acted and practiced at work. And I still think now I use the skills that I developed on my MBA a lot more than I ever discovered the skills or the skills I developed as an engineer. And I think for that, and you probably know in recruiting, people tend to get promoted on their ability to do the job they're currently doing. So if you're a good engineer, you tend to get promoted. But at some point, I found I needed that additional level of skill set. And I was supported by an employer to go and do the MBA. But I think even if I wasn't supported, and with modern day apprenticeships and upskilling apprenticeships, I certainly now wouldn't hesitate to do that. And I had thought if I ever took early retirement, what would I do? And I'd probably do a PhD or maybe redo the MBA, because so many things would have changed. If money's no object, I'd go back to university.
I was going to say, because MBAs, you hear the same thing as you're saying, that people go through their careers, they learn how to do the job that they're doing even better and even better and even better, whether you're an architect, building services engineer, civil engineer, etc., planner. But there's a point where leadership starts to kick in.
Really?
And just because you're good at designing a building doesn't necessarily mean you're good at leading people. So it's quite interesting to hear. So I'm fascinated by this. Can you distill it into one or two points that you felt that I walked away from the MBA thinking that I thought differently or I did that differently because of my MBA?
So I don't necessarily think I'm a good leader, but I've developed the practices that exist, so I now know that I lead and I manage in a completely different way. Being able to understand finance reports and budget and accounting, understanding how you would market something at work, a project you're working on, a brand you're trying to develop. I wouldn't have developed all of those skills, the mishmash of business-related study that you do on an MBA is directly related to the job you're currently doing. So you've got that real life experience. You're taking the projects that you're learning direct into the work environment. And one thing that really was impactful for me on the entire MBA, and yes, it's about processes and procedure and governance, but it's all about the people.
Amen.
And that's really what I try and do at work. Now, maybe to some levels of degree of success, I said, I don't consider myself a good leader, but I know I focus on the people. And I know I focus on the things that I was taught to focus on, and I enjoy my work by doing it that way.
So what does that look like? When you say you focus on the people, what day to day, are there certain things that you do that you actively think, right, this is what I'm going to do to make sure that not only you attract staff, but what's really key is to retain the ones you have that are good, because that's how we know we grow successful teams. So what is that cognitively that you go, okay, this is what I need to do to make sure I focus on them?
Oh, many things. I'm sure my team would probably say different things, but inclusion and communication straight away. I'm the director, and there is only one director within estates as a rule. There might be supporting directors, but there's always the director. But I actively involve my assistant directors and my deputy directors. If there's a decision I'm making, I'll consult them with that decision. We actively have team meetings. We have away days. We engage everybody in the processes that we're doing. I involve all of the team in recruitment, giving everybody the experience. But we focus on training and development as well. And regardless of the employer I've had, that's something that I've always tried to do. And my mantra to anybody who's working in the same team as I am is, my role is to develop you for your next role. So I kind of expect that you've got this job based upon your experience, and you're going to be really, really good at that job. And there might be some training that we need to provide to help facilitate that. But I need to develop you for your next role. And then when you get in that role, you need to develop other people around that. And mentoring. So we have a strong mentoring program. I have mentors, I have mentees, and I do reverse mentoring as well, which I think we spoke about at the Women in Construction event. And I found that so impactful and so powerful. But yeah, inclusion, transparency, communication, focusing on the people.
So can we pick up on that point about mentoring? Because, this series is meant for both employers to look at how they can hold on to their staff and attract people, but it's also for people in their own careers to reflect. So just talking about mentoring, if anyone listening to this was to say, I would love to get someone to mentor me, does it have to be someone in the organisation, or do you think actually you can easily get mentors? And if so, how can you approach them to say, would you mentor me?
Yes, of course. I think initially perhaps you would look for somebody within your organisation if you've never had a mentor before. But employers change, careers tend not to. I mean, over a 30-year career, you're probably going to have different facets of that career, and a number of us do change careers. but you're more than likely often enough going to be changing your employer. So to have a mentor that's outside of that frame. But also your mentors can change. I've had a number in my time. Most of them I'm still in contact with now, and most of them I would still go to for advice depending on that type of subject. Reverse mentoring, that's very much about your organisation. And when you're mentoring others, often that is within your organisation. But how can you do it outside? Well, CIBSE, Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers, they've got a mentoring programme. It's free. You can contact them and say, hey, I'd like a mentor. Go through some questions and you'll be offered a mentor. IWFM, similar things. Post on LinkedIn. So for me, mentoring, networking, just getting out there and certainly for me, that blurring of the line between the professional and the personal, I just enjoy. It works well for me. It may not work well for anybody else, or for others, sorry. But by going to networking events and getting out there and meeting people, regardless of your level within an organisation, or regardless of your length of time within a career, mentoring really, really does help you get out there and meet other. But networking helps you get out and meet other people. It's how we
met each other.
You know, and there'll be others.
It's what I love, several parts to that, but what I love is that ongoing, you're very clearly somebody who loves ongoing development yourself, that you seek it out. But what I love is you play it forward so much. I love that attitude of my job is to, you were good enough to this job when you walked through the door, so now my job is to get you ready for the next one. The irony is they probably stay because of that. They probably, ironically, will try and stay and get that other job with you because you've put their needs at the front and centre of what your job is. And that's what I've seen in really good leaders that I've either interviewed or been around, is they don't make it about themselves, they make it about the people they lead. And it's clear to me that is what you do. And also the second part about the mentoring, that you're making this commitment towards yourself, that you want to develop, that might not look like someone in your organisation, that could be someone else. But at the same time, if you want to sort of almost put it out there and receive mentoring, then why not also do the same thing for someone more junior than you? It's a really, I think, an amazing, positive sort of reinforcing cycle, isn't it, of supporting each other? It is,
and construction, the built environment, is a huge industry, but it's a small industry. And one of these days, I'm going to end up working for somebody that used to report into me. Yeah. And I need to have done the very, very best I could have done to help them develop. Because I might need a job in the future. I love that.
And it is actually true, because what you see is in investing, what you're saying, in long-term relationships with people, regardless of whether they're actually you're working in the same organisation at the time, you never know when you might bump into people again, and you never know when they might be a client or someone working on a similar project to you. So I think there's that thread, isn't there, of that long-term relationship that you form with people. Yeah. And I think that's what I've seen as I've interviewed successful people. That seems to be quite a common trait that a lot of you have, actually. Can I just pick up a little bit more now about the wider networking? You just made a point, you said, I blur the lines between the personal and professional, because you said I go to CIBSE and I spend my personal time there. Can you talk about your connection with CIBSE? Because that was the way we met, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So originally, way back when I applied, or I was looking to become a chartered engineer, I, throughout my life, have had an inferiority complex and have often had an imposter syndrome. And I was thinking, when I get for that chartered interview, I need as many aces in my pack as I can possibly have. So let's start doing some volunteering with CIBSE. Let's try and get my face known, my name known. Of course, didn't work in the slightest. But I did become chartered. I did enjoy the volunteering that I did with CIBSE. And I enjoyed the people that I was working with. And we are a small industry. And we are there for the art and the science of building services, and that's kind of, we do what we do. And I think everybody that's involved with CIBSE from a volunteer perspective, you can see their commitment to the industry, and I haven't met anybody that isn't focused on the development of others. Of course, there is a personal benefit from it, and I get a huge amount of satisfaction by helping CIBSE and assisting with CIBSE and going to the board meetings. And I really do enjoy that. Maybe that comes back again to the MBA, that I really enjoy the business side of what it is that I do. But they're just all really good events. So whether it's IHEAM, IWFM or CIBSE are the events I tend to go to in the evening, there's always a great subject matter. They're always free. They always have food. And they always have a bubbly drink, be it soft or be it hard. And there's other people in the same situation. And when I first started working in operations, I didn't know enough people. And I am a little bit shy and retiring. If I can stand at the back of a room, then I'm going to stand at the back of a room. Now I know that I do that. So when I walk into an event, and I was discussing this with somebody recently, I'm not going to leave until I've spoken to 3 or 4 people.
Love that.
Okay? And I know when I speak to those 3 or 4 people what questions I'm going to ask them. Obviously, I'm going to listen to their responses, and the qualifications might go in a different way, but I'm going to prepare what I'm going to say. And that's kind of advice that I would give to anybody who doesn't currently network or is uncomfortable going to evening events, is when you get there, say you're going to speak to 3 people, have a preparation. Hi, what is it you do? What brought you here? Do you live local? Just something along those lines, and the conversation will continue. The next event you go to, there's a possibility that 2 of those people you've met could be at the next event, and straight away you've then got a relationship. Relationships become friendships. You become more comfortable at events. You then might find yourself volunteering to help on a committee or help with a project or a white paper, just by saying, I'm going to talk to 3 people and I'm going to ask them 3 questions. That's how I've been able to do it.
And I love that, because that is such a practical tip that everybody can do. Everyone can commit to, I will speak to 3 people I don't know at this event. And I know for myself, the work that I've done, as we said, we met at the Women in Property event for International Women's Day. I did one on the same day up in Preston, for the Committee of the Built Environment. And the people you meet, they're so enriching, actually, and they're amazing people in their own right. Never mind the fact we all work in the built environment. They are, and they bring, it's not just that you give them info and that there's things you can share. They bring you so much. Look at today, it's hopefully you'd have come anyway today, but I think it's the fact that we knew each other and we'd spent time together and we had similar ideas at the International Women's Day, that you then can see how, you never know when you might meet again or what impact that person might have. Have you ever sat back and thought, actually, not only has it helped me in terms of my professional chartership, but do you feel that all the things you've done has also helped you in your own career?
Without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm obviously Director of Estates. We cover 500 square miles, we've got 129 buildings in a critical healthcare environment. But I've never worked in the healthcare before. And it's not necessarily easy to transfer your skill set from completely different sectors. Having spoken to people on the interview panel, I'm quite confident now, if it wasn't for my involvement with CIBSE, the documents that I've helped produce, the fellowships that I've got, and that professional recognition I've got through the work that I've done by leading steering groups, then I wouldn't have been successful in that opportunity. So all of the CIBSE and the IWFM stuff was in additional to the qualifications I've got experience in. And perhaps it was that additional validation of knowing that David's going to know where the best practice is. Okay, he may not know this, but we've got clear evidence that David is involved in engineering best practice, facilities best practice, construction best practice across the industry. And why would he not be carrying that into into the role we're going to give him? And of course, if it doesn't work, they could have got rid of me, or they could get rid of me. But hopefully it's going well. But I'm reasonably confident that if it wasn't for my CIBSE stuff, I wouldn't be in the role that I'm currently in. And if it wasn't for my mentors, I would not be in the role I'm currently in. I could sit here and name 2 people without whom I would not have the job that I've got, and I wouldn't have the involvement with CIBSE that I've got. They've been that instrumental. Because
they encouraged you to do it, or they gave you enough almost self-reflections to say, these are things I need to improve on, that got you to the place where you were ready for that role? Or was it more they just encouraged you and said, do it?
It was it was the encouragement. I don't think I've had many mentors in my time that have said, do this, do this, do this. But the two that I can remember, and I say remember, but I don't mean remember because I think about them most days. They're the ones I've taken behaviours from. They're the ones that have led by an example that I want to be. And they're the ones that have given me a chance when perhaps somebody else might have been better placed, but they saw something in me, or they gave me an opportunity to take promotion or to do something else. And that is emphatically how I work now. That's why I'm always looking for somebody to have an opportunity and create it. And when I go to an event now, the three people I'm looking for are the new people that look like they're nervous, those that look like they're underrepresented in the industry, or those that look like you could have a conversation with. So I still look for the three, but I don't want to say target, but I perhaps target my approach to those I think would benefit from a conversation.
And that's such a joyful thing to do as well, because you're helping someone else on their journey and they benefit from it. But I always think you benefit from it. Of course. If you help somebody or you do something for them where you didn't need to do something, you benefit from it because it gives you purpose and you've had an impact, a positive impact. And it does make you feel more fulfilled, I think, in your career if it's more than just one-dimensional. And I think that's the thing, going back to what you were saying about your own career and how it's been helpful for you to be involved. Often I hear people say, I don't have the time, or they don't make the time to get involved with either institutions or mentoring. But ultimately, it isn't something where you can go, yes, and here is how it has helped me. But ultimately, you can in the long term see that there will be certain decisions that will go your way because of the fact that you've done all these extracurricular things, whether it be within institutions, whether it's volunteering, on charities or being a school governor or whatever it might be. It might not be obvious at the time, but it's not just that you're giving your time. You actually learn something back. I felt that. I've been a school governor for 4 years. And yes, I give, but I've learned a lot. It's not just been a one-way street. So do I think it's impacted on me? Yeah, I do, actually. Yeah. So I think it's always worth doing, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't do something if you don't get something out of it. And be that personal growth, financial benefit, if you're doing it from a career to help your kids because you're more involved with the school. I can understand all of that. But I think anybody watching the podcast or listening in, you're probably listening in for a reason, and it's probably because you're looking for a career development or a career in construction. And if you're looking for a career in the built environment, then there's professional regulations and there's professional registration. So for me, it's chartered engineer. So if you're becoming chartered or professionally registered, you're going to have an obligation to do continual professional development. And you're not going to get your chartered or your professional registration without an evidence of continual professional development and training. So not having the time isn't really the most effective answer for how you're going to show your CPD. So you just choose how you're going to do it. Now, you can do it by reading magazines, you can do it by watching online lectures, but you can also do it by getting out there and giving your time. And serving on committees is all CPD because you're all learning. And if you are in the earlier stages of your career and you don't have seniority at work, well, you can get seniority in a committee, so you can learn how to run a meeting, to chair a meeting, to be the vice chair or the chair of a committee, or to manage an event, or to develop public speaking skills that you're not going to get in your day job. So not only is it really complementary and beneficial for your career, but it's part of your CPD as well.
Love it. So finally, what I'm interested in is D&I in the space of the built environment with construction, engineering, FM. We obviously have some of the biggest challenges, delivering on net carbon zero being probably at the forefront of that queue. And we need more people to choose this as an industry. So young people choosing this, they're normally not uniquely, but often in maybe a STEM background. How do we compete with the likes of tech and pharma and all the other career choices that people who may be interested in those subjects? How can we make more people feel welcome? What do we need to do, or what do employers, do you think, need to do to improve the diversity of people that they attract?
Well, everybody every organisation, I think, can do something. How do you attract people in the industry? Well, you have everybody represented and reflected at the top levels of an organisation. And my organisation is fantastic. We're wonderfully diverse, and I really, really like that. Also, professional institutions play a part in that. Having panels like CIBSE does. We've got the EDI committee, which is a standing committee at board level, which can influence decisions. And then into that, it has the 4 diversity panels. And we therefore individually discuss matters affect. So obviously I'm gay. I lead the LGBTQI panel, and we actively once a month get together to have conversations around things that are affecting us. Or that's occurring in the political environment, and what can we do to support or advise CIBSE in relation to LGBTQI matters. We have the same for Black and Asian minority ethnics. We have the same for the neurodiverse community. We have the same for women in building services. And Women in Building Services, WIBSE, is actively looking about how they can promote inclusion. When we were at our event, I did some research on some figures with regards to children and their attitudes towards engineering. And I think it was between 11 and 14, there's about 70% of girls would be interested in a career in engineering. But by the time it gets to 16 to 18, it's dropped to 25%. So what is it that's happening with girls that's changing their view on engineering? And quite possibly it's the marketing that we do. It's the perception of the role. And it's not seeing themselves reflected. But that also translates into the organisation. So within recruitment, I would be very surprised if there's a job description out there now that does not say, we do not discriminate against. Yes. We encourage the recruitment of. Yeah. That's a great statement, but it's bland and it's unpersonal. So we did some research, and I personally did some research and discovered that females would tend not to apply for a job if they do not think they have all of the skill set or all of the qualifications to meet. Whilst, and I know this is stereotyping and being gender normative, but men will probably give it a go. Now, of course, there's a spectrum of there, and it doesn't apply to all women, it doesn't apply to all men, but it's known that women wouldn't apply. Yeah. So I've now put a statement at the end of every single job advert, and I say, and I'm not going to quote it direct because I can't remember it, but I say, does this job excite you? However, do you think you do not necessarily have all the skills or all the qualifications to apply for this job? If so, you might still be the person we're looking for. Reach out, have a conversation, we want you to work with us. And I put my name and my email address at the end of it. So why have I done that? Well, for me, this is making a specific target to encourage women to apply for roles within my team. And I'm making it personal by putting it in speech marks, putting it in italics, changing it to blue so it stands out, and putting my name at the end of it. I've had phone calls based upon that statement that I've put on job descriptions, and I've had them from females, and they've been asking the question about whether they think I should apply, and I have encouraged them to apply, and there's been success based upon that. So I am now going to continue to do that in every job that I ever advertise, regardless of where I'm working at. Obviously, I had to run it past HR, and obviously we haven't made it specific to women. Yes. But we do say that underrepresented people may not choose to apply for this job, and we'd really encourage you to do that. So it's just about the small things. So regardless of the size of your organisation, you can do that. Regardless of the size of your organisation, you can have your ESG criteria. And we spoke before about tick boxing, and of course, it is not about tick boxing, and we agree that.
Yes.
But you need to have something you're going to measure yourself against.
Yep.
So you need to make some statements. And if you're only a board of 4 and you're a small organisation, you could still have one meeting a month where you look at your EDI or your corporate social values. And what are our targets going to be? How are we going to measure what we do? How are we going to show what we do? Because realistically, once you've got your ESG right, then you're probably managing your business in the right way, and you're probably a business that I either want to buy from or work for. And you can do that at any level. You really can. So there should be no excuse for not looking at how you've got gender imbalancement. And I know it's really difficult for a small organisation, but a lot of companies aren't small, and they're still not getting it right.
I think it's also about, obviously, be aspirational in the targets you set yourself, but don't leave that target on a whiteboard somewhere. Make it real. Change what you're doing so you get better outcomes. Because ultimately, it's great to have a target, and most employers now will, around DE&I. But ultimately, it's what are you actually doing to progress that? And what changes are you making? Because if you just sell it, and then when someone actually comes either for an interview, does their research, because most people will do research before they go on an interview, they'll ask people who work for the organisation already. If that isn't really the culture, if it is just a aspiration, you won't get the people actually applying. No. And it's turning it into reality that's so important, I think.
No, and I hate generalistic comments and statements, but who doesn't look at Glassdoor now before they go for an interview? And as I say, if you're getting your ESG right, you're going to be hopefully performing well as a business and as an employer. But you've got to be able to prove it. So if you make the statements, expect to be challenged, expect to say, okay, well, where's your evidence? How are you doing what it is that you're doing? If you say it, you've got to prove it.
So if you could give one last top tip then, with your either CIBSE hat on or as an employer, that you would say, this is what helps really to attract and retain staff, with going back almost to your MBA bit. If there's one last piece of wisdom, what would it be?
So for attraction and retention, it would be about being genuine, being inclusive and being authentic. As a leader, just be your best person. If you're your best person, hopefully you'll have others want to be able to work with you. With regards to people coming into the industry, I've said it throughout this interview, and I've said it on many other occasions, network, network, network. Take control of your career and where you want to go. And it's rare that you'll get that alone from in your own organisation.
I love it. I've learned so much today myself, actually. I already had experienced it firsthand, having met you before, but your ability to form relationships and it's clear to me how important that is to you, but also listening to you today, how much that's actually really positively affected your career. So this career-long, commitment you've made to developing relationships has not only benefited you, but clearly people have benefited from it because of your commitment back to them. So that's something that I think I'm taking away from today. Also, your commitment to yourself of continuous learning, and that commitment and that open-mindedness to, I keep wanting to develop myself, but I keep wanting to commit to develop others, I think is huge. And then finally, to me, is that real commitment, but also with action, not just aspiration, and this is how we as an industry have got to be able to attract and make people feel at home in this industry. So thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you.
For more episodes of Building Futures Career Conversations, please go to the Hayes YouTube channel or follow us on LinkedIn.